Hello and welcome to that was way too bold. Starting again. Hello and welcome to episode 33 of the Women in Manufacturing Association's Hear Her Story podcast. As we get ready to embark on a new year, it's a great time to reflect on what we've been able to accomplish and where we see ourselves in the future. Whether you're looking to start a new job or asking for that promotion you've always wanted, identifying a personal brand can help you define your authentic self and set your goals both professionally and personally. I had an opportunity to talk with Jana Gessner, Vice President, Environmental Health and Safety at the always iconic PepsiCo, to get her insights into what it takes to stand out and how to establish your own personal brand. This episode was recorded live at the Women in Manufacturing Summit, where Jana and more than 150 PepsiCo employees traveled to San Diego to participate in the conference.
So welcome to episode 33 of Hear Her Story live and as well recorded. So I'm so happy to have conversations in this Hear Her Story podcast with women in industry and in manufacturing, and to celebrate their careers, their journeys, and most importantly for you to hear their stories so that you can have some takeaways as you navigate your own careers, ideally gaining some advice of what not to do, what to do, and then as well just to be inspired by the great things that our guests accomplish. Our guest for this episode is Jana Gessner. She is Vice President of Environmental Health and Safety at PepsiCo. She also is a Women in Manufacturing Association board member, a great ally of our organization. Oops, sorry, hit my mic. A great ally of our organization. We're so blessed to have her participate with us. So please help me in welcoming Jana. Thanks, Allison. So Jana, you are such an inspiration, and obviously I'm sure you had an interesting way to which you got and arrived at your current position. So we always like to start out our episodes of Hear Her Story with you telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, where did you grow up, what were some of those early things that influenced you, and then obviously we'll get closer later into kind of how you arrived at your current career.
All right. I like to start off with a unique factoid about myself, and that is I was adopted as a baby. So, why would I start off with that? It's because I feel like I have beat the odds to be here, to be alive, to be able to impact the world. So I think that's kind of always pushed me to kind of figure out, why are you here? Because you were supposed to be here. So I'd like to start off with that factoid. I grew up in the Midwest in Toledo, Ohio. And my dad was a tool and die maker, so he was in manufacturing in the automotive industry for a while. My mom was an emergency room nurse, so she took care of all the trauma that was coming in at the hospital and worked there. And as I grew up, a lot of things I like to do. I've always kind of been like a right brain, left brain person. So I liked a lot of things to do with science, like technical things, chemistry, biology, that kind of thing. But I also have this strong, what I would call like the right brain thing. I love like musicals and theater. I was in band. I was a drum major my senior year. So that was kind of an interesting thing. And then the other thing I did big when I was young was I rode horses. So, all of us like, Daddy, can I have a pony? That kind of thing when you're young, right? Well, my dad made me work for it. Like I had to clean 70 stalls every Saturday to pay board because we didn't have money to have horses. So it really taught me a good work ethic to be able to really work hard for something that I wanted. And I was in 4-H and spent a lot of time barrel racing. That was my jam back in the day, a long time ago. I did a lot of barrel racing and things and showing horses. Always knew I wanted to go on to college. So you talk with your counselors and your teachers and stuff in high school. And one of my teachers said, "Hey, I think you should be a pharmacist." Like, all right, I guess I'll be a pharmacist then. So that was like, okay, that sounds really good. So I started working at a pharmacy through college just to kind of get my feet wet in it, and was in the professional division, through the entrance into pharmacy. And then my second year, I had this life-altering moment. I got an F. I got an F, okay? Have any of you guys gotten Fs All right, like
Yes.
for me, it was a game changer.
Yeah.
I had never got an F in my life, ever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? Why did this happen? You know, and like I went into this complete panic mode about getting an F. But I gotta tell you, it was the point in which I paused and said, well, maybe this isn't the path that you're supposed to be going down. And maybe there's a reason why this happened. So I kind of paused at that point, went to another guidance counselor in college, and he kind of looked at my portfolio and stuff, and he said, you know, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I really like science, but I have this right brain thing going on too. I love to write. I like to do all those kinds of things. And this counselor said, have you ever thought about technical writing? I'm like, don't even know what it is. Never heard of it. No. He said, there's a big demand for people that can understand science and write about it. There's a big demand for that. I'm like, all right, sign me up. So I flipped my major over to English, if you can imagine, going from pharmacy to English. And I'll never forget my mother when I made that call to her. I'm like, hey, Mom, I'm changing my majors out. Remember, she's in the medical field, right? I'll never forget this. It rings in my ears today. She said, what are you going to do with an English degree? What are you going to do with an English degree, Jana? And I'm like, I don't know, Mom, but I'll figure it out, right? So I switched my majors, and then I kind of, you know, because I do environmental health and safety. So you're like, how did you get from technical writing to EH&S? And back in the day, I don't know, maybe some of you guys remember, when you graduated college and looked for jobs, there wasn't, you know, we didn't have the internet. You had to go to the Sunday paper in the want ads, right? That's where all the jobs were every Sunday. And so I found an ad there to be a proposal coordinator for an environmental health and safety cleanup company. So I'm like, all right, let's go. So I remember going and interviewing, and I got the job. And once they found out that I could write about underground storage tank removals, okay, fun things like that. Once they found out that I had a science background, they kind of kicked me out to the field and said, hey, we need someone that can separate acids from bases and flammables from non-flammables. So I was out in the field in level A turnout gear doing sampling and things once they found out I had that background. So I kind of always say I fell into the environmental health and safety business. I never had like this desire like, oh, I want to be sustainability, or, you know, I really want to do safety. So it was kind of a good mix for me of the two, of the sciences plus the people thing when I got into EH&S. And then after that job, I really got deep into manufacturing. Went to work for several automotive companies before I came to PepsiCo. But what I found out was, yes, I like the environmental side, but for me, what drives me is the people. And I kind of did, I would say, the flip over to much more interest in safety than the environmental. I can still write air permits and things like that, but my true love is with people. And in manufacturing, if you think about, you know, so again, spent a lot of years in the automotive business, came to PepsiCo about 11 years ago in this EH&S role. And when I think about manufacturing, the complexities that come out of manufacturing, that really, really drives me and feeds that, you know, kind of that, like I was saying, that science or that data-driven side of me. But then being able to interact with people every day around how you keep people safe, and what, you know, what will you, teaching them what you want them to do and how you influence people, that really drives the people side of me as well. So when I think about EH&S, it touches every piece of the supply chain. Every product that comes out of all your manufacturing plants, someplace has an EH&S piece to it, right? Whether it's machine guarding in the equipment, or it's fork trucks out in the warehouse, or it's the logistics of getting your product out to the customer, EH&S touches it all. So it really is for me, it's a very complementary profession to be in, and I just love it. It was the best thing I ever did, was get that F back in college.
That's great. So, I mean, that's crazy how it propelled you, though, into a whole different pathway and journey. And
yes.
I have to say, I'm an English major, and so I have some passion there as well. And my parents said a similar thing. What are you going to do with this? But to me, it's such a great foundation to really any type of work. It allows us to improve our communication skills, to be able to write effectively. And those are all great skill sets to have in any position that you hold.
I did go back and get an engineering degree, though, too. So that's the funny piece I forgot to mention was, I had a boss, and it was a guy, who challenged me. He was like, let's go get our master's degree. And, back in the day, there weren't a lot of EH&S organization or colleges that taught that, but there was in engineering at Wayne State in Detroit.
That's great.
So we drove up to Detroit. He only lasted one semester. I finished my degree. Drove up to, worked all day, drove up. Drove up to Detroit, came back home, did it again. It was like an hour drive. But so yeah, that really fueled the right brain, left brain piece. So,
I love it.
Yeah.
So I know that having a personal brand means a lot to you. What does it mean to create a personal brand, and why is it important for women in manufacturing careers?
Okay. So if you think about PepsiCo, I mean, branding is everything. Marketing, sales, everything about PepsiCo. I mean, we have $22 billion brands. Think about that, $22 billion brands. So when I get on an airplane or I'm talking with people and you say, well, where do you work? That's like the most proverbial question everybody asks, right? And I say, I work at PepsiCo. And they're like, oh, Doritos, Mountain Dew, Pepsi. And I'm like, yeah, it's really, really fun things. And I think about it, when you go to a grocery store and you're thinking about why you're putting whatever you are in what you buy in your cart, a lot of times we do it because it's a brand we know, we like the taste of it, or we know that it's a good cleaning chemical, or it stands for quality. When you do the grocery store thing, I would say you could apply that same logic to yourself. When you think about what differentiates you from your competitors or other people that are in your field. Excuse me. So having a personal brand is really important because it kind of talks about this is what differentiates me from everybody else. And in EH&S we do this branding kind of thing as well for our programs. We have something called the Zero Zone, which is like everything all EH&S. We've branded it at PepsiCo. Logos, it has a look and a feel. So when we go out into our manufacturing facilities and you wear something that says Zero Zone, everybody immediately knows this is EH&S. So we do this consistently. We have our culture programs that we have at PepsiCo. We call it the Courage to Care. We put brands on them, and it just helps people remember what it is that you're talking about, and they kind of stand the test of time. So branding is very important, personal branding as well.
And as you said, when you think about how brands influence our decision making, think about how our own personal brands then influence what people are thinking of us when they make decisions, as we talked about throughout sessions today and yesterday at Summit, about those promotions and advancements and opportunities. You want people to remember you, and you want to be one of those individuals that come to mind when those opportunities arise.
More and more females are inquiring about the apprenticeship program because they know it's a great way to better themselves and provide for their families.
This program has helped me and my family by giving me a goal-oriented workspace, which in turn encouraged me to pursue more and be a better example for my daughter and help me execute multiple goals.
I got pregnant at a young age. I finished high school early. I finished high school at 17 years old. Started working when I was 15 to provide for my son. Being a teen mom was hard, definitely. It was hard figuring out what I was going to do, how I was going to provide for him. And this, apprenticeship came along and it kind of showed me the path. So not only did I become a mom at 15, I started working at 15. I graduated high school at 17. Graduated college with an associate's at 19 and bought a house at 19 as well. So it's really allowed me to do a lot.
I feel that the apprenticeship program will help my family, letting my son know that not everything is a man-dominated world. And financially, I feel that it will help us gain a lot in our future.
So how has having your own personal brand helped you in your career or even personally?
I think standing for something, when you think about what it is that you want to differentiate yourself about, I think for me, personally, the things that were very important to me as a part of my brand is I like to be thought of as very approachable, that I have a lot of high energy, that there's care to what I'm doing. And I think my biggest takeaway about my brand would be is that being able to take complex environmental health and safety regulations from the Code of Federal Regulations and then translate them and simplify them and take that complexity out for our operations. So yes, you have to do X, Y, and Z because the law says you have to, OSHA, EPA, but what does that mean for our frontline? What does that mean for our supervisors out at the plant? So I think for me, my personal brand has been being able to unravel that complexity and help everyone else to kind of know what it is we have to do to comply with the law, of course, but really how do we take care of ourselves? How do we have zero injuries, zero collisions with our trucks, and zero environmental releases? So it kind of just, that's something that I think I like to be known for.
Mm-hmm. So obviously that's something that I think a lot of us, when we forget, is important to do, to take stock of who we are, what are those things that we really care about, what are the things we stand for, what do we want to be known for? Not to be morbid, but I sometimes think of that kind of going to your own funeral idea or concept. What would you want people to be saying and thinking about you as that person? And are you letting shine those things that you're most passionate about? So people that maybe are just starting on that journey and haven't yet identified their personal brand and the things they stand for, what guidance might you give them as they start that process?
I would say there are so many tools available to you to kind of help you to figure out who you are. Like, I know you guys know who you are, but I mean, things like, have you heard of the DISC assessment or the insights wheel? I mean, I put a lot of stock in those, and we do this exercise with my teams as well to kind of understand, you know, how do I show up every day? What are those attributes about who I am that can propel and help me move forward? So we do the DISC assessment, and that's, you know, the yellow, the green, the blue, and the red. Are you guys familiar with that? You know, I've taken it 3 or 4 times. It always comes back to the same two. So it's pretty consistent.
Yes.
You might guess I'm high yellow, very high yellow, but I have a high red component too. But interestingly enough, my blue, which is like that data driven, is like way at the bottom.
Yeah.
So I think what's important and of using those tools is I can then complement who I am not with people who are on my team. So my team has different skill sets that I don't have, and that's what I think gels and melds us so well, is that we work well together. So I would first recommend, if you haven't done one of those kind of assessment tests, those are really, really good. The second thing I'd like to think of is there's a term, like VOC is how I remember that acronym, and it's not volatile organic compounds, like a few environmental people out there, but when I think about it for branding, it's like visibility, that V, and you know, showing up, and how you show up matters. Okay, you never know who it is you're going to meet, who's going to be in the room. How you present yourself is very important. So, you know, having strong visibility is big, and taking opportunities where you might be out of your wheelhouse a little bit, but maybe go sign up for an ERG group that's totally different, because you can have visibility. I do something at PepsiCo where I help MC this event called Circle of Champions, and it's for our frontline. And people say, but you're in EH&S, why are you doing this? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a big thing to me. It just warms my heart working with the frontline, but that provides me that visibility. And then you think about like originality. Everybody, there's the O, everybody brings something to the table. Everybody has unique skill sets. So trying to find out what makes you original is really important, and then see that confidence. That's that you know, showing up with confidence and faking it till you make it. And people ask, like, how do you gain that kind of confidence? And I think it's just, again, showing up as you are and moving forward, even if you make mistakes, and just keep rolling. So.
Yeah. And we've talked a lot about that as an organization, that idea and concept of authenticity. So being your genuine self, trying not to conform to some other standard or some other person that is not you, because it's not going to serve you well in the future, for sure. So I know you and I had this conversation when we were together in, I think it was Charlotte, and visiting Daimler Trucks, and had a conversation about this concept of being iconic. And I was so taken with the concept, and I know that's something that, you know, PepsiCo is very well known for as a brand, as a global brand and a global iconic brand. And when you think of the idea of yourself personally being iconic, what are those things, or how does it mean to you, or how would you interpret this concept of being iconic for your own self?
Absolutely. And as you said, PepsiCo's brands are so iconic. In fact, we just had 125th anniversary for Pepsi. So it's
Wow.
been around since 1898.
Oh my God.
That's pretty amazing.
Yes.
So when you think about iconic, I mean, typically iconic is what? It kind of stands the test of time. People know the brand. People know what that means, that you're familiar with things that are iconic. So when you think about iconic, is it iconic for what? What do you want to be iconic in? Is it revenue? Is it safety numbers? Is it profit margins? Okay, what is that iconic piece? When I think about myself being iconic, I kind of like what I was saying before is like I want to stand for something. When I leave PepsiCo, I want them to remember me other than the COVID queen, okay?
Yeah.
Because that's what they know of me now, right? It was COVID because, EH&S was so involved in that very tumultuous time of the world. And at PepsiCo, it was like, Jana, what are we doing? I'm like, well, I don't know. So it was like an opportunity for me. That visibility piece will bring that back up. But I think there are certain things that I have done throughout my career that make it iconic, or they stand the test of time, and people want to be around that. So I've, again, tried to show up like with that approachability and that down-homeness kind of thing, and being just someone that somebody can go up to and have conversations with and feel comfortable. But I'll add one little fun thing about iconic.
Yeah.
I have 2 words that I have coined in my life, okay? One of them I actually am getting trademarked right now.
I love it.
Isn't that cute?
Okay.
So the one word is, yes, isn't that cute? Yeah. The one word is shahoo.
Shahoo.
Shahoo. And everybody's like, what does that mean? I mean, shahoo is like anything good. All right, yeah, shahoo. So that's a word I truly came up with when I was riding rodeo. There was a cute cowboy riding around, and we're like, I was trying to say wahoo or something, and shahoo came out. So
I love it.
I've kept that one for a while. So shahoo. And the other one is humbility. So when I think about being humble, like having humbleness, that term humbility I like to use a lot as well. So those are 2 fun things. But shahoo, that's going to be my retirement.
S-H-A-H-O?
Oh,
H-O-O,
H-O-O, yeah.
Shahoo.
And so it's kind of like envision life is good meets lake girl. Okay, something like that.
We're going to all have to use it, but with obviously the trademark next
Yes,
to it.
please do. Shahoo.
For sure. And I think as you're talking too, I think it's almost creating that statement about ourselves. So as you were talking about, you want to be approachable, you're authentic, thinking of that, Jana Gessner is, an authentic, approachable leader who cares about people. And it's creating that kind of comment statement. What would you want people to say about you, as we said, when you're not in the room? I also went through an amazing exercise at Summit a few years ago that the Boulder Company did as an opening exercise. And it was answering questions that actually formulated that statement for yourself. So I believe the exercise was such that you said, I'm Allison, and I care about women. And so I work at an organization that works for them year round. And so... And it was an amazing exercise. So, find those tools, whether it be a DISC assessment or some other, assessment or tool to help you arrive at that same statement about yourself. Because it's so very important. You never know who you're going to meet in an elevator or at an airport or in a restroom that they say, who are you? And how wonderful if you can kind of in a clear and concise and powerful way say who you are and what you stand for. So very important. So as we look at personal icons that we've encountered in our lives, are there any that stand out to you and that mean something special to you, some icons?
I think like the women in manufacturing piece to me is really a big part of my life, and I would call that an icon. I think just the educational piece, I'm on a couple boards of colleges and trying to step into that space to, I would say, help others along behind me. I think about manufacturing. We've been in manufacturing 30 some years, and there weren't these kinds of organizations back in the day. So I think for me, this is a personal icon for me, being a part of WIM and having that as a part of my DNA, but more importantly, being able to reach back and bring others with me. And I have, when you think about the whole EHS team at PepsiCo, there's like 600 EH&S professionals, like 50% are women. There's a good foray of women there. I feel like it's my duty and my personal responsibility to kind of bring them along with me. So I like to have mentoring sessions with some of the ladies just to be able to help them in their career. And, you know, they'll bounce things off and say like, hey, somebody said this to me. What does that really mean? Or how might I take this idea and present it so that people hear it and hear my voice? So I would say for sure the women in manufacturing is a big one for me.
That's excellent. So, you know, we always like to have conversations on Hear Her Story about advice. So we've all been given lots of great advice throughout the course of our careers. So what is one of the best pieces of advice you have received throughout the course of your carear?
Can I have two?
You may have two.
Okay.
You may have as many as you'd like. As many as you'd like.
I think, you know, for me, my lifelong struggle that I've always had is being enough. And I don't know if any of you can identify with that. Sometimes the feeling of I'm just not enough or not showing up enough and things like that. So I had a mentor who once told me, you know, I was kind of struggling with that whole thing. And he said to me, it was a he said to me, just show up. Just show up. I'm like, well, I'm here. And then what he said is like, no, you have everything you need in your toolbox. Whatever you show up with that day in your backpack and your toolbox will be enough to get you through the day. And that resonated so much for me, is like, just show up. Just show up. And you'll make mistakes. All of us do. How you recover from those mistakes, how you take doors that are closing on you, and you know what your response is to that. Maybe you didn't get the job that you wanted, or the position didn't happen. How you respond to that is key. If you show up angry, mad at the organization, you know, have a chip on your shoulder for a long time, people are watching how you respond to those adversities. So just showing up is half the battle. For me, that was one of the big things. And I think the second thing, the advice that people have given me, is like deciding on which stake you're going to fall on. So there's so many things coming at you. There's so many opportunities to go do. Choosing which ones are the right ones to fall on it takes time, it takes practice, but knowing what that is and letting some of the other things go. And when, you know, I think about the stakes, you know, we talk in PowerPoint at PepsiCo. You know, okay, everything's put into a deck, right? You got to have a deck. It's got to be pretty. It's got to look good. It's got to be concise. I have spent hours and days on PowerPoint decks, cleaning them up, to get into the meeting and have them only review like the first 2 pages. And I'm like, what about all this other stuff I have left on here? So I think that, you know, deciding which stake you're going to fall on, what I mean is that sometimes we put a lot of effort into making something perfect when good is good enough. Okay? So think about that. So I think those have been some amazing pieces of advice people have given me throughout my career, is just figuring out that showing up just as you are is okay.
Those are great pieces of guidance. So as you look at our audience, and you've met, I'm sure, many women throughout the course of Summit, if you were to say something to your younger self, in addition to the 2 pieces of advice that you received, what might you have said to yourself earlier in your career? Would there have been a warning or a best kind of piece of advice to that person or to that young woman who's in her career to help guide her way in her journey in manufacturing?
Good question. I think, you know, what I would tell my younger self is stop being so hard on yourself. You have what it takes. Have confidence in who you are. What you bring to the table is enough. And don't let any obstacle along the way stop you from moving forward, right? We all run into the roadblocks, the doors, the people that don't listen, not being invited to the meeting, not getting the call back. And I think if you allow those things to shut you down and not propel you forward, you're going to have your career is not going to be what it could be. And I think just being able to push yourself forward, and that's what I would tell myself is, but not too much, because there are times like I let work run my life too. So I think as I've gotten older and more mature, finding that balance is key. Yes, in your younger part of your career, you're going to be driving, but don't let go of your personal life. Don't let it impact your personal relationships, because those are much, much more important than what a job is. And I think was a tough lesson that I had to learn, that I would tell myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good advice. Well, Jana, it has been such a pleasure to have you as a guest on our Hear Her Story podcast. Great insights, wonderful kind of musings, and as well, just I think stories regarding some of those things that influenced your career, made you so successful. So thanks for being a guest.
Thank you.
And I wish you, of course, nothing but luck in the future. So thanks.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Hear Her Story, a podcast produced by the Women in Manufacturing Association. Be sure to share, review, and subscribe to Hear Her Story on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen.